There are places on Earth that seem to hold no more surprises, places we believe have already given up all their secrets. But there are also places that remain almost entirely cut off from the modern world. And deep beneath the ice, buried under kilometers of frozen silence, are secrets that no one has ever dared to speak aloud. But perhaps the most frightening thing of all is this: these secrets are either being deliberately hidden or no one dares to reveal them. So what are they? What truths lie frozen in that forgotten place? Let's find out in today's video, so fasten your seatbelt. This might be the deepest mystery you've never been told. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. Situated at the southernmost point of the planet, this sixth continent seems to belong to a world different from the one we live in. With average temperatures around -25 degrees Celsius, it exists like a blank space on the map of human civilization. And it is precisely this emptiness that makes the place so remarkable. Unlike other remote corners of the world, places that people have eventually managed to set foot on, Antarctica has always felt out of reach to ordinary people. Not because we cannot go there, but because we are not allowed to know. Before 1909, most of the world didn't even know Antarctica existed. It wasn't until an expedition led by Ernest Shackleton set foot on this endless expanse of white that humanity, for the first time, truly realized the Earth still held a place this cold, this remote. But is the absence of life on Antarctica simply a matter of harsh weather and distant geography? Or is there something else still hiding beneath the layers of ice that are millions of years old? We often speak of Antarctica as a vast natural laboratory, a place where scientists come to study climate, glaciers, and the lingering secrets of ancient paleontology. But what if everything we've been told is just the surface? What if, beneath the frozen silence, Antarctica is guarding a completely different chapter of human history? In 2015, while much of the world was still caught up in debates about climate change and technological progress, Linda received a strange handwritten letter. No clear return address, no explanation, only a brief title at the top: The Truth About Antarctica. The author claimed to be a former pilot who had served for many years in both the United States Air Force and Navy, someone who had spent considerable time stationed in Antarctica. He wrote that he had personally witnessed things that, in his words, no one would believe unless they saw it with their own eyes. But this wasn't the first time Linda had encountered such unsettling revelations. 3 decades earlier, she had been the first to report on a series of bizarre incidents in America's agricultural heartland, cases of cattle mutilation that left no trace. For an extended period of time, hundreds of ranches had reported the same chilling discovery. Healthy cows found dead in unnatural positions, their bodies entirely drained of blood, and organs like the eyes, tongues, and reproductive systems removed with a precision that resembled laser surgery. At a time when such technology didn't yet exist. With the instincts of a seasoned investigative journalist, Linda didn't overlook a single detail. She pursued hundreds of interviews, collected thousands of pages of reports and photographs, and eventually produced a documentary titled A Strange Harvest. The film didn't just send shockwaves through the community of anomalous phenomena researchers. It also won international acclaim and, more importantly, opened the door for countless other witnesses to come forward with stories they had kept hidden for years. And soon, the strange stories of Antarctica began to find their way to her. Most of the letters came from retired military personnel, former government engineers, and even scientists who had once worked on strictly classified projects. According to them, Antarctica was never the pristine wilderness that maps and textbooks suggested. Not only did they reject the idea that the continent was uninhabited, they insisted that what lay beneath the surface was what truly needed to be concealed. They spoke of secret research facilities, of architectural structures with no identifiable origin, and of operations that no government agency had ever officially acknowledged. All of it, they claimed, was taking place in silence, hidden beneath the vast white ice of Antarctica. In the haunting letter Linda received at the start of 2015, the pilot began recounting a fateful flight, one that took him across a restricted zone near the Amundsen Scott station on a night of bone-chilling cold. and what he and his crew saw in those skies would forever change what they believed about Antarctica. The pilot's name was Brian. He was a former flight officer who had served nearly 15 years in Antarctica. The moment he saw Antarctica's hidden secret came on a late September day in 1995, and from that instant on, it marked a clear and irreversible divide between everything he had once believed to be true and what he had just seen with his own eyes. The mission that day was, at first, nothing out of the ordinary. An engineer stationed at McMurdo, the largest research facility in Antarctica, had suffered a severe accident and was in urgent need of surgery. However, McMurdo lacked the proper medical equipment, and the only pilot available to transport the patient to Davis Station was Brian. As per strict regulations, all flights over Antarctica were required to avoid a military no-fly zone near Eastport Station. But that day, there was no time to wait for clearance. The patient had slipped into a coma, and under the pressing emergency, Brian and his crew were forced to cut through the restricted area to save precious time. Their C-130 Hercules pierced through the wind at a steady cruising speed. At first, as they entered the no-fly zone, everything appeared routine. But only a few minutes in, Brian received a report from his co-pilot. The navigation system was showing strange interference, unlike any kind of electromagnetic disruption they had encountered in thousands of previous flight hours. With the electronics no longer reliable, they had to rely on visual coordinates, and that was when they saw it. In the middle of the vast, blinding white snowfields was an enormous underground facility. Its circular opening was as wide as an entire football field. It wasn't a natural crevice, nor was it a scientific outpost as marked on any map. Surrounding the structure, dozens of armored vehicles, leaving no visible tracks, were steadily moving toward the entrance, as though some hidden operation was taking place deep beneath the surface. Brian and his flight crew were speechless. They had never seen anything like it before. But there it was, in plain sight, a vast entrance into the Earth, so large that their aircraft suddenly seemed like a mere plastic toy beside it. And what unsettled them most was that, even from the plane's altitude, they could not see the bottom of the massive shaft. Still, there was no time to hesitate. The patient's life was hanging in the balance. Brian maneuvered the aircraft out of the restricted zone and continued the journey to Davis Station. The patient was successfully stabilized and survived. A few days later, after returning to the Amundsen Scott Station, Brian was abruptly summoned to a small meeting room where a senior officer was already waiting for him. The meeting lasted only a few minutes, but its message was unambiguous. He was forbidden from ever speaking of what he had seen. Yet nearly 2 decades later, he chose Linda to reveal the entire truth. He didn't just send her his account. He included his Antarctica service medal and a photo of the 1995 flight crew. In the photo, he stood in the front row on the far left, wearing sunglasses, a quiet but unmistakable proof that what he had seen was no fabrication. And as if Brian's story alone weren't shocking enough, another former military man, known only by the codename Sparta 1, would soon step forward, ready to reveal an even deeper layer of Antarctica's secrets. It was on a July afternoon in 2018 that Linda sat through an interview so disturbing, she stopped taking notes halfway through, overwhelmed by the weight of what she was hearing. The man introduced himself as Sparta 1, a former serviceman who had once served in the United States Navy. For security reasons, he never revealed his real name, and during the online interview, his face was completely concealed, while his voice had been altered to avoid recognition. But the content of what he shared was anything but vague. According to him, in 2003, an American spy satellite was scanning the southernmost polar regions to detect signs of nuclear activity or dangerous geological shifts. But this time, the images that came back left intelligence analysts stunned. A massive artificial structure, clearly defined, was detected nearly 3 kilometers beneath the ice. It was octagonal in shape and constructed from black basalt, a material known for its extreme durability, commonly found in ancient structures with high technical sophistication. Immediately following the discovery, a specialized task force was deployed to Antarctica with one singular mission: to locate and investigate the structure. Sparta 1 was assigned to provide security for the scientific team. but that also meant he witnessed the entire operation, from the first approach to what lay deep within. When they arrived, another survey team had already begun excavation, opening up part of the structure. Emerging from the dense layers of ice was an enormous stone doorway. It looked heavy, monolithic even, but it could be pushed open with surprisingly little force. Inside was a perfectly straight corridor that descended into the earth, where the temperature shifted in an inexplicable way. Outside, the air was minus 40 degrees Celsius, but inside it was strangely warm. The entire hallway was illuminated by a faint bluish glow that emanated from the walls themselves. Sparta once said that the scientists paused for a long time in silence, overwhelmed by what they were seeing. They understood immediately that this structure could not have been built after Antarctica had frozen over. If it truly lay beneath 3 kilometers of ancient ice, then it likely predated the continent's glaciation, meaning it could be over 30 million years old. Beyond the first hallway was another door, one that opened vertically, sliding up into the ceiling like a massive mechanical gate. And just beyond that, they stepped into a vast chamber, so large its size could not be measured by the naked eye. The room glowed with a cold, quiet blue light. It was as still as a dead forest, and at the center of it stood something that caused everyone to hold their breath. Hundreds of biological containment units, transparent, cylindrical tanks, stood upright. Suspended within them were humanoid forms that did not match any biological record known to mankind. They were not entirely human, but neither did they resemble the stereotypical extraterrestrials of science fiction. According to Sparta 1, each figure had a human-like form, but the proportions of their limbs, the tone of their skin, and the softness of their features were distinctly different. Some of the beings appeared to be in a state of suspended animation, yet faint biological signs, indicators of life, could still be detected. What shocked the team even more was a hushed comment whispered by one of the scientists. These were not visitors from another world. They were intentionally engineered hybrids, part extraterrestrial, part ancient human. Sparta 1 claimed that the purpose of this base was to preserve life. It was a biological backup system, created for a future in which humanity would no longer be capable of sustaining Earth. These beings, if ever awakened, would be the ones to inherit the planet. A biological reset, triggered after the fall of mankind. If Sparta 1's initial account had left Linda in a state of stunned disbelief, then what he revealed next pushed her to the very edge between belief and doubt. According to Sparta 1, the structure beneath Antarctica was not unique. In fact, it was merely one part of a global network of underground bases, connected through a system that most of humanity has never even imagined. Similar facilities, he claimed, exist on the Moon, on Mars, and even deep beneath Earth's oceans, in places so remote that neither radar nor satellite imagery can reach them. But what made this even more astonishing was what came next. Major governments around the world are aware of this. And not just aware, they've taken part in bilateral agreements with non-human species. In those agreements, humans granted extraterrestrials permission to conduct genetic research, to observe social behavior, and even to make limited ecological interventions in specific regions, trading these permissions for technology, for knowledge, and above all for one thing: time. Because, according to what Sparta 1 heard directly from project advisors, Earth is moving rapidly toward its breaking point. Climate change, resource exhaustion, and escalating geopolitical instability are driving the planet into an irreversible phase. And while these otherworldly civilizations have not fully intervened, they have not stood idly by either. The first meetings, Sparta 1 claimed, took place after World War II, and one of the key strategic locations for those early negotiations was Antarctica. In 1947, just 2 years after the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, the United States Navy launched a massive military operation to Antarctica, known as Operation High Jump. Officially, it was presented as a geological survey, but in reality, the operation was a covert military expedition intended to investigate the presence of unidentified forces. In an extended part of their conversation, Sparta 1 mentioned a phrase he had heard repeated over and over in classified documents connected to the project: phase transition protocol. According to him, it was a technical term used to describe an ultimate scenario, one in which humanity no longer holds the ability to govern the planet, When that threshold is crossed, the transition phase begins. The beings beneath the surface, the ones designated to take over, will awaken. With all the life experience and investigative instinct she had, Linda asked him a direct question. So who made that decision? Who gave the authority to hand over the planet? Sparta once stared into the camera for a long time before responding, his voice low and heavy. Not us, and not them either. The ones who made that choice left here a very long time ago. He didn't elaborate further. Since 2015, Linda has received dozens of other accounts from witnesses who had never met one another. Yet they all described the same structure, the same pale blue light, the same soul-deep chill that settled over them the moment they stepped inside. Some referred to the beings as the gatekeepers. Others believed they were the descendants of a prehistoric civilization, one that once ruled the Earth tens of millions of years ago and had simply lain dormant, waiting for their time to come again. Do you believe that what you've just heard is the truth? You might not believe everything you've just heard, and maybe the stories of underground structures, extraterrestrial life, or secret agreements feel like nothing more than imagination taken too far. But if something in this story made you pause, even for a moment, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to keep exploring the mysteries that time and silence have tried to bury, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video.